The Chicago Bears held their rookie minicamp this weekend, where we learned more about the head start Caleb Williams got that other rookie quarterbacks don't get, plus an update on a couple of injury situations with other Bears draft picks and a new tight end in town.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on all of your favorite social media platforms, including the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. On the show today, we bring you the latest from Chicago Bears rookie minicamp, including how Caleb Williams got ahead of the game here by working on a lot of the Bears stuff before he was even a Chicago Bear, so that he can come into rookie minicamp and be that much farther ahead than all of the other rookies who didn't know for sure they were going to be Chicago Bears. Then we'll check in on a couple of injury situations involving the other Bears draft pick, Odunze, not practicing because of some hamstring tightness, and perhaps more importantly, the third-round offensive tackle, Kiran Amegadjie, is not practicing at all this offseason. Odunze is more of just a little tweak. Amegadjie, more of a serious recovery from surgery he's already had. So we'll check in on those injury situations. And then we'll wrap up learning a little bit more about the tight end that the Chicago Bears signed to their 53-man roster and how he might fit into this depth chart as we move forward to the rest of the offseason and training camp. But I want to start with Caleb Williams. And we knew that Caleb would come into Chicago and be, super talented and look the part throwing on air in rookie minicamp. And I every year at this time, I always want to hesitate. I always want to emphasize, hey, let's not overreact to videos or clips we see from rookie minicamp, OTAs. These are guys in shells throwing against air. And really, whether it's good or bad, I'm not really going to get worked up over, videos of throws or completion percentage. I mean, people were comparing the throws of Jaden Daniels and Drake May at Patriots and Washington Commanders rookie minicamp. It's just asinine stuff that is not meaningful in any way, shape, or form. But we knew Caleb would come in and look good and has absolutely looked the part. But part of what has accelerated this process was his work ahead of time before coming into the building for the first time. That between all the times he met with the Bears this offseason and got to, they'd teach him something and then quiz him on it, right? So he'd get little snippets here and there. And then especially after they had their top 30 visit, when Caleb came to Hallis Hall and met with the Bears, that's when they really started giving him a lot of specific instruction where he and his private quarterbacks coach, Will Hewlett, could work on Chicago Bears terminology, specific practices and methods that they want the quarterback to do in terms of, delivering the play call, commanding the huddle, dropping back to pass, footwork, things like that. He's already been working on those things so that when he came into rookie minicamp this weekend, he was already much farther ahead than all the other rookies who just got this information this week or last week or, whenever if they got drafted or tryout players, et cetera. All these players are trying to catch up, and Caleb Williams has already had this for longer. And as he explained, it's a pretty big head start that kind of keeps him already moving on to kind of the next level, the next most important things at practice.
The amount of time you got to spend with the Bears during the pre-draft process, and Flus was just up here talking about how Will Hewitt was even doing some of the Bears stuff with you in some of the training. How far ahead of the game do you already kind of feel coming into rookie minicamp with where you're at with Bears stuff so far?
Yeah, I feel pretty good right now. Obviously, the top 30 was huge. The draft, not draft, but combine, it's a little tighter. So they're testing you and trying to figure out, who you are and all of that. And so the top 30 was big for me. Gave a bunch of notes, ideas of how the offense is, verbiage, drops, cadence, and all the things that that really matter. Breaking the huddle, getting in the huddle, being able to communicate. And how those things go. And so right now, I feel pretty good. Obviously, we go out here today, I'm going to have a few, mess ups probably and things like that, working, to eliminate those as fast as possible. But, you need those things to grow and, progress throughout the time and years and things like that. So excited, but, I feel pretty good right now.
Clearly, this kind of a head start is really valuable for a rookie quarterback to come in and take the reins and not only like perform well on the field, but also like assimilate in the locker room and become a leader on that team by being able to perform well on the field quickly and kind of operate as though he's been there before. But I also want to make sure we don't like overreact to that either. I mean, even he and I think the coaching staff try to downplay it a little bit, right? Like there are still some things that you can't get a head start on or work on your own away from the team, right? In terms of chemistry with receivers and kind of going through play speed of like, okay, how does Keenan Allen run this route? How does Odunze run this route? How does DJ Moore run that route? What timing do I need to get rid of the ball to get it to them? Sure, but like to be able to knock out a lot of the other like little things that he would just be trying to do along the way, like he can come in now pretty darn studied and know, okay, he doesn't have to think as much, that when they call a play in the huddle, he doesn't have to pause and translate like, okay, that's similar to what we ran at USC when it was like this, and at USC we called that lightning, but here we call it thunder, or however the terminology is. Like the more you do it, the more time you have with it, the quicker that thinking and translation goes, where all of a sudden you can just instantly be fluent in the Chicago Bears language, as opposed to like coming in and just hearing this terminology and trying to sort of memorize that on the fly while you're also trying to do all the footwork things they told you and remember what route you're throwing on this play and everything else that every rookie is trying to do, in addition to also getting the terminology and the wording all right, like, and how to deliver that in the huddle. Like there's so many different moving parts, and the ability for Caleb to have gotten those, to have gotten many of those or some of those ahead of time, to have worked on with his private quarterbacks coach leading up to the draft before he was even a member of the Chicago Bears, allows him to be able to then focus more on the specific things that he needs to be with the team and with his coaches to actually do, right? Like instead of like everyone else having to do like the individual things and the group things, like he's already done a lot of the individual things and gets to be ahead of the pack there and can focus more on the group things when he's with the group, while also still working on the individual things. And that it's such an advantage for him that like none of the other rookie quarterbacks are getting that, right? Like I don't think the Commanders, we weren't 100% sure that Jaden Daniels was going to be the number 2 overall pick. So it wasn't like they were having Jaden Daniels spend months getting ready to be the Washington Commanders quarterback. And then beyond that, like the Patriots weren't sure if they'd get Drake May at 3. And talk about Michael Penix, the Falcons, I'm sure weren't positive they were going to take Penix there. I mean, none of these other rookie quarterbacks knew. And most rookie quarterbacks in most drafts, unless you're the number 1 overall pick, unquestioned quarterback, you don't know for sure where you're going to go, and you're not getting that kind of head start. Like Mitch Trubisky, even as the number 2 pick, did not get that kind of head start from the Bears. Justin Fields, obviously, like 5th quarterback taken in that draft, 4th or 5th quarterback taken in that, I think 4th. But regardless, like didn't know that the Bears were going to take him, didn't have that kind of ability to work ahead. So like Caleb gets to start on the front end, farther ahead. It's a literal head start here for him in this quarterback development process and in this offensive process than any other Bears quarterback ever has, and that any other rookie quarterback in this draft class has. And I think it's just another way that the Bears have been very smart about this and put Caleb Williams in a great position to be successful early on. It's not a guarantee that everything's going to work out, and he's still going to make mistakes, like he said. Like, not going to have a perfect practice by any means, but like to be able to skip some of that steps and have had him working on that ahead of time only helps this process move along faster. Because he's out of this rookie class, some of these other rookies were not out there moving along in this process. Odunze missed rookie camp practice with some soft tissue tightness, I think, in his hamstrings. And then we found out that your 3rd round pick, Kiran Amegadjie, is not practicing at all for the off season and up until training camp. So we'll check in on his injury situation and what that means for the start of his career and the rest of this Bears offensive line next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The winning formula for championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. We're talking superchargers, LED headlights, exhaust kits, roof racks, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your vehicle, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. The injury news out of Bears rookie minicamp was a little bit concerning. Usually it's kind of a breeze. You know, you're not even actually like practicing against opponents, really. It's kind of just playing on air and doing drills so they can kind of see how players move. And yet 2 of your 5 draft picks miss practice at the sort of the lightest possible style of practice at rookie minicamp. The Odunze situation, not very concerning. You know, routine hamstring tightness where it's like, okay, it's a very meaningless practice. If there's any pain or any kind of discomfort, your 9th overall pick does not need to be out there. Like, we know how good he is. We know what he's capable of. He'll be fine. It's not like anything to be concerned about, but like, why push it? Why rush it? Just, all right, you're good to go. Let's go see some of these other wide receivers that are trying out for a job and need to be out there for every snap. But Rome, all right, you know, we'll see at voluntary minicamp or OTAs coming up here in a little bit. So not as big name, not as concerning. The bigger issue is with your 3rd round pick, Kiran Amegadjie out of Yale, being still sidelined with the injury that has kind of plagued him throughout this pre-draft process, where he dealt with the injury last season and missed half of his final year in college, had surgery back in October, and so then I think he was invited to the Senior Bowl, but wasn't able to participate because of the injury. You know, wasn't really doing a ton in terms of like pro day type workouts. Like, he just hasn't been able to be 100% fully ready to go. After the Bears draft him, the Bears said, hey, our medical staff cleared him. He's good to go. We're very comfortable with where he is injury-wise. But then Matt Eberflus starts his rookie minicamp press conference and says, you know, Amegadjie is out and is not going to practice during this rookie minicamp, and says probably not going to practice through any of our off-season program. And our goal is to get him to be 100% healthy and good to go in time for training camp, which right away, like, throws up the red flag. You never like the feeling of rookie coming in with injury, right? I mean, I think I'm probably one that jumps to my mind right away was like, you know, early on stuff with Chris Williams back in, was that 2007 first round pick? But Gabe Karimi has had, I mean, especially offensive tackles that the Bears have drafted that have had injury problems. It's like, we have some PTSD here when it comes to that position, dealing with injuries right away and in their college career. It sounds like with Amegadjie, it's not like he like worsened anything in this process, but it's more like the Bears saying, hey, much like Odunze, it's a little different, but like with Amegadjie, it's like, hey, we don't need him to be a day 1 starter. We're not counting on him to, you know, we don't need him to try and like develop and grow and to be this thing like right away out there. Like, he doesn't need to prove a ton to us. So like, why rush a guy back into rookie minicamps, OTAs, and maybe he'll feel better sooner and play sooner than training camp. But like, they also know that like training camp is going to be the most important thing for him to be good to go for. So that's what they're going to prioritize. But I don't know, even when you hear him talk about it, it just doesn't give you a ton of confidence. But here's Kiran Amegadjie kind of talking about it, and I don't know, it didn't feel as reassuring as I thought it would be when you hear the player himself talk about it.
What kind of work have you been able to do the last 2 days? I know they've had you kind of off to the side. What's the plan as far as like rehabbing you and getting you ready for camp?
Yeah, I mean, I've been meeting with the medical staff and kind of just getting my rehab protocol together, and I'm just really excited to get in and get in with the O-line coach, Coach Morgan, and get the playbook down. Do everything I can mentally to be ready when my time comes physically.
The Bears told us like right after you were drafted that the medical staff medically cleared you. But were you surprised that they are going to slow play this process to get you ready for camp? Were you expecting to get some like actual on-field work in when you got here for rookie camp?
I mean, I was just expecting to come in and do whatever I can to be ready to play when my time comes. Whatever I need to do, off the field to be ready when I get on the field.
You feel like you will, like, day 1 of training camp, that's the goal, and are you optimistic about that?
I mean, we'll see. We'll see kind of how everything plays out. I'm gonna trust them and trust their guidance on this. I'm not a doctor, so I know how my body feels, and I know I'll communicate that with them, and we'll see. We'll see how as time goes on.
How does your body feel?
My body feels good. Feels good.
When was the surgery?
It was in October.
I'm certainly not here to overreact, panic, raise the red flags or anything just yet. But I don't know. He kind of was like, well, we'll see. Hope I feel good, but I'm just gonna do what they tell me, and we're gonna take it slow. And sure, but I don't know. I would have liked a little bit more reassurance, just in terms of hey, still recovering, but feeling really good. It's just about not rushing anything, but not worried about it. Just moving forward. And I don't know. There was a little bit more uncertainty from him than I would have liked, just to kind of have that comfort of hey, everything is fine here. This isn't going to become something bigger or worse. Because again, Kevin White and Tevin Jenkins, I mean, we've had a lot of these Bears rookies come in with injury issues that pop up, and you're like, wait a minute, we thought everything was fine, and all of a sudden it's not. And then it's hard to trust a little bit and be skeptical of how that's going to go. But certainly I think he's in a good position, or the Bears are in a good position where, they don't need him out there. That he's not. I mean, he's going to compete and try and push Braxton Jones, but it's not like they're counting on him to beat Braxton Jones. If he can, that's great, but it's probably going to be Braxton Jones at left tackle, and Kiran's going to be the backup anyway this season. So whether he performs at OTAs and minicamp versus training camp probably isn't going to be that important, but it does slow down that developmental process for a guy that we're hoping can adapt from the FCS level at Yale to the NFL level quickly, and maybe play off the bench if there's an injury at some point this season, or compete to start next year. You'd really like to get as much out of this developmental time right now. The offseason is the time to get better and to work on those fundamentals and those drills, and to improve your technique. But even if it's OTAs and you're not really doing a lot of full contact, you can work on your footwork and your balance and your punches and your technique, right? All the things that you want a young, raw offensive line prospect to be working on with the Bears coaches. This is pretty important time for everybody, but especially young developmental player who, okay, you're not necessarily banking on him being great this season, but you don't want to have to slow anything down or make this take longer than it has to, especially, we're talking about a third round pick here, right? This is not a late round guy who you take a flyer on and hope you can build him up into something. It's no, this is a guy they expect to be good and they want to make him great. And okay, then he needs to be on the field practicing in order to get there. And the fact that this thing had existed beforehand and is now lingering through this, I'm glad it's not something new. And I think, I don't know if you've read, but Johnny Newton, the Illinois defensive tackle, who I actually can't remember who drafted him now, but the foot injury that he was dealing with in the pre-draft process, now his other foot is hurt and he needs surgery on that. A new injury popped up for an already injured guy that is a first round pick. That's the real scary pick stuff. Amegadjie here is more just that's unexpected. Maybe we should keep an eye on that and make sure we're monitoring that situation throughout the offseason to make sure there's not more there than they're letting on. And hopefully training camp comes around, he's good to go, and it's all just it just takes time to recover from having surgery. That's a legit thing, and that sometimes this is just the way the process goes. And certainly the Bears had to feel comfortable enough with it to take him with the 75th overall pick. I don't think they were winging it and saying, I don't know, we'll see when he gets here if that quad is a problem or not. I think they have a pretty good idea of what they're managing and dealing with here. So we have to give them the benefit of the doubt on this one, but we'll certainly make sure we're not ignoring a third round pick, missing significant offseason time with an injury that we thought was a lot farther along or better off than it actually was. So fortunately, it's not a guy you're counting on, but it is a guy you want to get more out of at some point. So again, not overreacting, not panicking, not raising the red flags, but just saying, hey, let's put that in the something to ponder file and look for that one sometime down the line. In the meantime, the Bears did add actually a couple players to their 90-man roster, but most importantly, I want to talk about the veteran tight end they signed, Tommy Sweeney, who we touched on briefly on Friday's podcast, but his story is pretty interesting, and I think there's more here than you might realize if you aren't familiar with his background and kind of what he did in college and what he's been through since. So we'll get to know this new Chicago Bears tight end next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. These playoff series are great right now, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So you bet $5 on any of these games, anything on FanDuel. And if your bet wins, not only do you get the winnings for your $5 bet, but then an extra $150 added right into your account that you can bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. You can use that money on futures odds on Caleb Williams to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Over-under on Caleb Williams' passing yards is like 3,700 yards on there. And over-under on Rome Odunze's receiving yards and so much more. All in their app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So, to get your $150 in bonus bets, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The Bears signed one of the veterans who tried out with the rookies at rookie minicamp, tight end Tommy Sweeney. He's been around the NFL a few years now, but didn't play at all last season and hasn't really been able to stick as of late. But he's also run into some issues that are not his fault and are out of his control. And there's certainly a comeback story here with him that makes him interesting. And especially when you look back at what he did in college, I think there's reason to believe in him as a guy who can make this Chicago Bears 53-man roster and maybe make some level of impact, right? He's at best your number 3 tight end after Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett. So there's certainly going to be limitations with him, but we've seen him be a solid number 3 tight end back with the Buffalo Bills for a couple of seasons in that offense. Like, again, this is not a guy who has a ton of NFL production. He was a 7th-round pick by them a couple years ago out of Boston College, and since then spent last training camp with the New York Giants, but didn't end up making their 53-man roster because he had a what they called a medical incident, I believe was the phrasing they used during training camp. He I don't know the exact word. I don't know if he collapsed, but what they called it was a medical event during practice where he was carted off of the field and treated by medical professionals. They said it was one of those kind of medical events where they have to say he's stable, alert, and conversant. Like that level of serious, right? This is not just like even like a knee injury or something, but this was like some kind of medical event. And based on his history, I don't want to like over speculate here, but earlier in his career, he dealt with heart issues. And so I can't help but wonder if in a training camp practice, or I guess it was during the preseason, but at a practice, carted off the field and treated by medical staff and in stable condition after a medical event, if there might not have been some sort of potential connection there. Because earlier in his career, I think he came into the league in 2019, but during the 2020 season, he got COVID, as a lot of players did. But then after like a couple of weeks on the COVID list, that COVID developed into myocarditis, I think is the heart disease they call it, where it's inflammation in the heart. And like he missed the rest of the 2020 season with an inflamed heart. So like we've seen this guy lose a year to COVID basically, and then lose this past season to a medical event on the field that kept him out for the whole year. So like he hasn't played not because he's been like bad, like so terrible that he can't make a 53-man roster, but because he's had these freak medical issues that are just they're not even football injuries, right? These are not even just bad injury luck. It's like just like bad body health luck that I'm sure he's an NFL athlete, right? It's not like he's in bad physical shape. It's not like he's not taking care of himself and eating, right? This is just something that you can't control in your body. And so like there's a certain comeback story here where it's like you want to see Tommy Sweeney like get another fair shot back in the NFL. So gets a workout with the Bears, gets signed now to the 53-man roster, instantly slots in as the number 3 tight end. He's going to compete with Steven Carlson, an undrafted free agent from last year. Plus the Bears have another undrafted free agent on the depth chart right now that they brought in, Brendan Bates, who we talked about briefly out of Kentucky, another blocking style tight end. And Tommy's definitely a blocking tight end in the NFL. He has 18 career catches in 3 seasons for 165 yards and a touchdown. Like this is not someone who in the NFL has been a dominant pass catcher, but is a solid blocker and special teams player. At least he was during his time in Buffalo. But I feel like there's still more to Tommy Sweeney. Like again, we're talking about a number 3 tight end here, so I'm not here to like proclaim that he's like some kind of fantasy sleeper who you should keep on your roster here. But I think he has more upside than you would think, given that he's, 28 years old, about to turn 29, been in the NFL since 2019 and has 6 catches a year on, averages almost no receiving production, is used primarily as a blocker. But back in Boston College, he led his team in receiving yards his senior year. 512 receiving yards on 36 catches, 4 touchdowns. And in his last bowl game, Pinstripe Bowl in I guess that would have been the 2019 Pinstripe Bowl, he had 7 catches for 137 yards and a touchdown. Like, this is a guy who can make plays as a receiver. Like, he's not a dynamic athlete. He ran like a 4.8 40. He's not fast. He's not explosive. He's not going to be an elite separator downfield. And that's why I'm not here to say like he's going to have some big season for the Bears. But he can catch the ball, and he can out physical players for that ball. Contested catches, using his body to kind of create that. It's not separation per se, but to keep his body between the ball and the defender, to kind of like a post player in basketball. Like, he can make tough, strong-handed catches. He's physical. He's not easy to bring down either because he is big and strong. He's just slow. So he's not going to run away from everybody. He's not going to break a bunch. He's not going to juke guys after tackles. He's not going to break a ton of tackles. He's not going to have a lot of those like 25-yard explosive play catch and runs. But for like a number 3 tight end, he's a decent blocker and he can catch the ball when you throw it to him. Like, that's essentially all you're looking for from that spot. I think there's enough receiving upside there with some proven ability as a special teams player and a blocker that, like, yeah, for a number 3 tight end on the street who was a tryout player at rookie minicamp, absolutely sign me up for the Tommy Sweeney story. And it seems to me like if he can just stay healthy, and again, not even in a football sense, but just in like a body sense, if he can just avoid a serious medical event, I think he's got a real shot at the 53. And you don't get a lot of those players on tryouts at rookie minicamp. I mean, sure, you might sign these players late in the free agency process, but like, this is a guy who could have a role this year when Shane Waldron likes to use a lot of multiple tight end sets. I think you're going to see these tight ends be active. I also predict we're going to see Kari Blasingame play more tight end this year. That's my fullback hot take. Like, he'll play fullback too, but I have a feeling they're going to have him play more of an H-back kind of like Kyle Juszczyk position where it's just like he's a fullback sometimes, a tight end sometimes. They move him around a lot. Like, I think he's going to have a more hybrid dynamic role than in the past when he's been a little bit more of just a traditional fullback. I think they're going to do a little bit more with Kari Blasingame, and maybe that could keep somebody like Tommy Sweeney off the roster. But I think if he stays healthy and he keeps rolling like this, I think he's got a real shot to play in this offense and maybe catch a couple of passes. Like they'll use 3 tight end sets, and he might be that 3rd tight end sometimes. And if he's on the field with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett, he's going to get the least attention on the field of any of those guys. I guess that would be no backs in that backfield, but you get the point, right? He's always going to be the least threatening weapon. So he's going to get the least attention paid to him by the opposing defense and more than space to work as a potential pass catcher there, and certainly a blocker in the running game as well. So we'll keep an eye on Tommy Sweeney as we come around to Chicago Bears training camp. The Bears also signed another undrafted free agent cornerback, Leon Jones, out of Arkansas State. A real small school, obviously, but 6'1", 190 length and pretty good physical cover player on the outside at Arkansas State. Going to be a big talent leap from Arkansas State to the NFL, like especially at a really crowded cornerback position in Chicago. I wouldn't expect him to make a 53, but someone who I think looked the part and played the part at rookie minicamp to impress the Bears enough to say, yeah, let's bring this guy with us through the rest of the offseason and see what he can do, along with the other undrafted free agent cornerback they signed, Reddy Stewart, who's more of a slot guy, 5'10", 180 pounds-ish. Can play the outside too, but smaller undrafted free agent cornerback, Reddy Stewart, and now they've signed the big, long outside free agent corner, Leon Jones. They still have some wiggle room on this 90-man roster if perhaps a veteran defensive lineman sparks their interest sometime down the line. I think that's going to be closer to training camp before they fully address that position, kind of like last year with Unique Ngakoue, very much at the end of that process. But when they do, you can be sure we'll break it down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Coming back tomorrow, and we'll hear from Bears defensive coordinator Eric Washington about what he needs to see from Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens as they grow into bigger roles on this defensive line this offseason. We'll also hear why special teams coordinator Richard Hightower is really excited about Bayless Jones because of the new kickoff rules. And so plenty more updates coming your way from the Bears coaching staff after we heard from the rookies here on the podcast today. So make sure you come on back tomorrow. Make us your first listen tomorrow and each and every day. And I promise that in exchange, I'll give you another opportunity to bear down.